Hey, okay. I think we're live now. All right. So, trauma bonds. Just going to start this whole thing over. Trauma bonds are created from the cycle of the reward punishment, the love bomb devalue, the hot and cold, the give, the take away, the giving withholding, so to speak. All of that by a toxic person, by anyone really, but in the situations we're talking about here on this channel, from by a toxic person toward another person, which in the person who's receiving the intermittent reinforcement, the intermittently at an unknown time. So you may be love bombed for 2 weeks and out of nowhere they devalue you and pull the rug out from under you. If you're in a relationship where you feel like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know what I'm talking about. You're walking on eggshells all the time. All of that is part of what creates a trauma bond. It is, I mean, there's a lot more to it, but that is the basic thing that creates it. Thank you, Jack. Sorry about that. I had my kids arrive. I had to stop the other one and start over. So, uh, anyway, um, and what it does to a person when you have that sort of intermittent play that um, is it creates an addictive pattern, an addictive feeling in the person who's receiving it, where you are constantly seeking the reward, constantly seeking the bombing, constantly seeking the good positive attention again. It creates in your brain a reaction where the brain chemistry gets involved. Okay, if you're constantly chasing, your dopamine is rising. When that happens, we need the resolution. We don't get the resolution until they give us the resolution. Sometimes it's just ending the silent treatment, right? When it's the feeling of relief you have when someone's ended a silent treatment towards you, or when someone's suddenly being nice to you again, or even just talking to you again, or replies to a text when they've been ignoring you. That feeling creates this pattern in us, this pattern in our bodies or in our brains that um, is like an addiction to the person who is causing the pain. So basically, we get hooked on the person who is the one causing us the pain. And that is the gist of the trauma bond, right? What did you say? That's okay. I just got home. Oh, hey, Jack. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Um, anyway, so one thing that happens when you are trauma bonded, so another brain chemistry thing that happens and body chemistry thing that happens is when you have even a breadcrumb, when it's gone on long enough, when you've been devalued and devalued and devalued, when you've been some had person withhold affection, withhold intimacy, withhold from you, when you've had someone go Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or Miss Hyde on you, right? When you've had that happen enough times, and then you receive the positive end of it, the positive side, the good side of the person, your body is flooded with oxytocin. You are flooded with the feeling of love, a feeling of calm, the feeling of relaxation. So it is chemically altering the way we respond to the person. In a healthy, normal relationship, of course, there's oxytocin flowing when you give a hug, when you say "I love you," those kind of things. That's normal and natural for bonding. Oxytocin creates bonding, but when it's artificially or manipulated to be there, not that they know that's what they're doing when they do it, but it happens, right? When it happens because of this process, you are pretty much getting hooked. I mean, you can hold a baby puppy, okay? And I should bring one on just to show you and prove it to you. You can look at one, okay? And fall in love with that puppy. Why? Because babies and infants and puppies and kittens and like little fluffy things flood you with oxytocin. It's not because you visually think the puppy's really cute and you want it and you love it. It's literally a physiological thing. Well, that's what happens from the reward, so to speak, of them giving you the positive on that side of the negative, right? So you get enough devaluing and then you get this little carrot, they give you this little breadcrumb, whatever, and you're flooded with oxytocin. It resolves the feeling of the dopamine seeking, which is what makes us keep going after them. And yes, your serotonin, Adam's saying, yes, your serotonin then, will rise and fall depending on what's happening in the relationship. So, is the trauma bonding as addictive as heroin? I don't know the answer to that legitimately. Like, honestly, I would say it is, from what I see in people, it is highly, highly addictive. It's a different kind of thing though, because you are being manipulated. It's not something you can make the choice on your, well, you can if you go no contact, but oftentimes within the relationship, trying to get out of it, you're being so manipulated and so controlled because of the way this works. And it's not, and I'm not saying that a narcissistic person knows they're doing this. Some of them might, some of them might not. They certainly all do if they watch this, right? But they don't know. It's not like an intentional act most of the time. It's just the nature of how the dynamic of these relationships work. And it works. It keeps people by them. It keeps people from leaving them when they act terrible, right? So you still miss your narcissist after she discarded you 5 months. And yeah, you know what? 5 to 6 months is very normal and very common. So if you're saying you're trying to reach out and she ignores you, try your best to stay no contact, Adam. Stay no contact, because it's removing yourself from the cycle. So put the addictive substance away, so to speak. Keep it out of sight. Keep it out of your reach. It does start to help break the trauma bonds. And we'll talk a little bit more about breaking trauma bonds after I go through this real quick. Another thing that happens, and I've talked about this before, I'm not a scientist, okay? So, gonna briefly describe this. There's things called endogenous opioids, okay? They control the pleasure pain part. That's what is going on in your brain when there's the pleasure pain thing happening. They also have it. So if they are not met with like a certain, oh my gosh, don't have the right words. If they're not met with the chemicals they need, right? You feel a feeling of withdrawal and dependence. And that is part of the burnt that what happens. I'm going to stop there because I don't know enough about it scientifically. Look it up, endogenous opioids. It's a thing and it happens in your brain. Cortisol. Cortisol is another thing that happens. It rises. When you have high cortisol, all kinds of stuff happens in your body. It's not healthy to live in a state where your body has a lot of very high cortisol. It causes inflammation. It causes irritation, fatigue, all kinds of feelings in your body. And so that's why you might feel very physically ill from being trauma bonded and from being around toxic people, because there's no way to be under constant stress and have your cortisol be low unless you have an issue with your body and the way cortisol is produced. Okay. So not, it's the stress hormone. Yes. And we talked about dopamine. Did we talk about dopamine, or was that on the one I had to delete? Quickly, dopamine so you can equate dopamine to something like gambling is a good example, or shopping. Okay, when you're seeking the perfect item, when you're hunting for something, when you are pulling the arm of the slot machine, okay? If you get addicted to that, like say someone walks in, plays slots, yay, fun, whatever. That was really addictive. That was really fun, but no big deal. Say you're a gambling addict and you're pulling the slot machine. That feeling, the constant waiting, hoping, waiting, failing until you hit the money, that is creating a dopamine response. It's making your dopamine rise. And that dopamine rising makes you seek doing more of the thing. So when you have an addiction or a bond or a trauma bond to someone, that's what's going on. Your brain is doing the exact same thing a dopamine seeking type of addiction is. So that's a lot of words. Okay. What are we saying here? Yes, waiting for a chocolate cake being baked. That's a good one too. All of this trauma bonding creates what's called cognitive dissonance. And you may have heard that, you may not have, whatever, but it is basically, it's a reaction to distress. Cognitive dissonance is a reaction to distress that makes your thinking, logical brain and your emotional mind self have separate opinions. Okay. And they don't communicate well when you have cognitive dissonance. That's the word. The word dissonance is when things don't harmonize. We all know what harmonizing is like. Now imagine the opposite of that. It's when it's something that's off balance. It's something that isn't harmonizing with the other thing. So if your heart is telling you, but I love this person, we start making excuses when we're in states of cognitive dissonance. Well, I know they had a hard childhood. Well, I know they get grumpy when this happens. I know we start making excuses that don't quite add up to the level of toxic behavior that they're throwing at you. Um, then you know you're in a state of cognitive dissonance when you're in that, and basically it creates two opposing beliefs. Okay, so all of the stuff that happens when you get addicted, get trauma bonded, then what happens, or during the process, this cognitive dissonance starts happening. And it's two opposing beliefs. Your brain is trying to comprehend the duplicity of what it creates. Okay, your brain is trying to understand it. You go, I don't know why I keep going back. I don't understand it. I can't. I know better. And that's when people start getting mad at themselves. They start feeling guilty. They start feeling shame. They start feeling all kinds of things about staying too long. I knew better. I should have known. And understand that if you're feeling that way, to be kind to yourself, because everyone goes through this when they're with someone. No one would stay in a toxic situation if they could get out easily, right? Unless they like it. And most of us don't like it. Okay. We wouldn't we wouldn't be staying. Um it's part of the process. So here are some signs that you might be trauma bonded. You might be holding on to the fantasy that they're not really toxic. Or, well, are they really a narcissist? Does it matter, guys? If someone is treating you terribly, if someone is gaslighting you, if you can't have a conversation, if you can't communicate, if every time you have an issue, they won't listen at all, if they're cheating on you, if they're lying to you, if they're stealing your money, if they're withholding money, if they're controlling you financially, spiritually, all of the things that they do. I mean, that's just a very small partial list of the things that narcissistic people do. If they're gaslighting you, if they're projecting and won't take accountability for their own actions, it doesn't matter if they have a label. Honestly, the only reason we use the label here is so that we have a common language to speak about. It's not because they actually need to be a narcissist with NPD. You can be pretty toxic and not have a diagnosis, and most of them won't have a diagnosis. So holding on to the fantasy that it matters what the name that it matters if they have a diagnosis. So that's another sign. Justifying or taking accountability for the other person. You're the blame. You're the problem. It must be you. If only you could do it right. If only you were a little better. If only, when it relates back to you. They didn't mean it. If they had a horrible childhood. I can help them change. This kind of thing. If you're doing this and to an extreme, or even a little bit, we all do this a little for each other, because that's part of seeing. We have to learn to discern the difference between um, seeing people's darker side and supporting them and sticking by them when they're not toxic people. We all have a side that we need people by our side with, to stick by us through the parts of ourselves that aren't perfect, right, or aren't good or whatever. But if someone is being so extreme to you, or even a little bit extreme to you, where they're doing all the stuff we talk about here, gaslighting, projecting, cheating, lying, all the things, then we have to stop and say, okay, they need to be the ones to take accountability. It's not me. This is theirs to take accountability for. I can take accountability for who I am. So, okay, another sign you might be trauma bonded is constant thoughts of a person. It is different than a light infatuation or an interest. Okay, it's anxiety, it's stress. And now here's a tricky spot, because people with codependent traits, people with borderline traits, people who have CPTSD from having narcissists or other toxic people in their life, you're kind of going to have anxiety around why aren't they texting? What are they doing? Where did they go? You're going to have that around attachment. Okay. We're going to have it. But if it is all the time, if you can't go to work without worrying about its worry, its concern, it's worrying about making them mad, worrying about stressing them out, worrying that they're out cheating, worrying all of that stuff over and over and over and over again, you're probably trauma bonded. All right. Um, a desire to return to the narcissistic person. You've left, they've left you, whatever the case is, discard, leaving, it doesn't matter, whatever happened, and you can't stop wanting to go back. You can't stop wanting to contact. You're constantly checking their social media. You're constantly worrying what they're doing, where they're at, who they're with. Okay, that's another sign that you're trauma bonded. A low self-esteem, that is a sign that you probably have been affected by someone who is toxic, if you know, especially if you never had one before. But that goes along with because it's hard to feel good when you're feeling all this other stuff, okay? And you feel like you've lost yourself. That's also a sign of, of CPTSD, of other things going on, but it is a sign of hypervigilance. That's a good one too. Yes. What else are we saying here? They make you feel guilty with the stories. Yes, they do. Um, trauma bond is the hardest thing I've encountered. That's a statement for you, right? Trauma bond is the hardest thing I've encountered. It's really hard because you know better when you're in it. You know you don't want that person. In fact, many people tell me they don't even like the person. They don't even want to be around them. They can see exactly what they are, but still there's this feeling of attachment, of bond, of desire to go back to them, desire to contact them, worried about who they are, what they're doing, all of that. Okay, let me just stop there. That's the brief trauma bond talk. Okay, and I'm going to go on with what can help and a little statement here. Ready for it? Okay, wait, let me see what it was his ex's fault because she abused him. In the reality, it was probably him with her. Yep. 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 Oh, playing the victim. Poor them. Yep. That's projecting and using somebody else's pain as your own and pretending it's their own so that they can get you hooked. All right. So let me go back to what I was going to say. Okay. Love should not be toxic. All right. Be it shouldn't be transactional. It shouldn't be, and I try really hard not to use the word shoulds. Really do. But in this case, it is appropriate. Um, love shouldn't feel like that. Okay. And if you have attachment problems, if you have attachment issues, if you have had this kind of thing happen to you in the past, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable when you try to find a relationship and when you're feeling attachment to someone else and you're unsure and all this. But I'm talking about, you know what I mean? If you've been trauma bonded, right? It shouldn't feel that is not love. Okay, guys. What that is that your love is blended with a cycle of toxic um, behavior from another person that is harmful to you. Okay. And what happens when that happens is we start to chase the potential. We start to chase the fantasy. Got to stop chasing the fantasy. All right. Can I speak a bit about trauma bonds with narcissistic parents and caregivers? Yes, because you are born into it. When it's a parent, you're born into it. You're groomed a little differently because they are creating the buttons that they push. They're the ones setting up the patterns for the way you think and feel and behave in life, right? Because that's your parents. So yeah, it can be a little different when you try and step away. There's also the guilt of I'm supposed to be caring for my parents. I'm supposed to be a good child, adult child, and care for the parent. So there's a lot of guilt and a lot of societal guilt and a lot of other stuff that gets mixed in there. It's the same bond, the same things going on with your brain, the same things going on because they're doing the same things. They're doing the same, not the same things, but you know what I mean. They're doing the same forms of manipulation towards you. So that's a brief. Oops, that's a brief description. Okay, so what can you do? What can you do when you're trauma bonded? It is hard, you guys. I know this. It is what a lot of people do is find a therapist that gets it and be really, really vigilant if you're doing this to find someone that minimally understands what a trauma bond is, okay? And hopefully has some experience with narcissistic abuse, toxic abuse, or whatever. Because otherwise, you could be spending a lot of time feeling really invalidated. In short of a or not short of, maybe even aside, or also as well, a lot of people use coaching for this because we need the validation. We need someone that's been there, that understands, that's there for you. Choose wisely. Choose someone that resonates with you, that you feel like hears you, that understands you. That's um, it's why Angie and I do it and try to be out here as we are, as the human beings that we are, presenting who we are, so that you can get a sense of trust or not trust, depending if you like the person, right? Like what works for you. So it's important that when you are seeking therapy or coaching, that you feel a connection, or at least a safety with that person, because what you're going to go through with them is trusting them that while you're in pain and while you're struggling and you're suffering and you are trying so hard to let go, they got your back. Okay. And they're right there for your next appointment or whatever you do, however you work it, you're right there to support you, to talk you through it, to talk you down, it's not an easy process. A lot of people do need the support. It is another reason we have group coaching. So that's aside. I just want to put that out there because it is, being careful and being selective is important in that, finding someone that you can connect with and trust. Okay. So other than that, try to live in the moment, one moment at a time, one foot in front of the other, baby steps through your day. Try to be right in the moment. What happens when you're trauma bonded, like anything else that is traumatic, you start flashing into the past. You flash into the past, you take that past, throw it into your future as either a possibility or a fear, and you skip right now. If you stay in right now and you look around, and if you're safe and if you're comfortable, like sitting in your chair, doing your thing, going to work, you're not comfortable in your emotions. But you know what I'm saying? You're not in a dangerous situation. You're in a situation that's safe and all of that for you. Try to be in the moment as much as you can. It does help. It's very challenging. And I'm not going to say any of this is easy. I'm not going to lie. This isn't easy. Okay. There is no easy way. There is no magic formula. There's nothing. There's walking your path through this that gets you out it. It's walking all the way through it, if that makes sense. Trying to let yourself feel what you need to feel when you're feeling it, get the support you need so you have someone by your side to do it with, and let yourself feel it, because if you do, you're doing it in the moment, you're experiencing it, you will start to process all of this, and you will start to make small changes toward breaking these trauma bonds. I've seen it over and over and over. I've seen people at 4, 5, 6 months out, frustrated, saying it's never going to work, it's never going to work, it's never going to work. And then months later, they're like, wait a minute, I'm not thinking about them anymore. It's gradual. Okay. Some people it's quick, but for some people, not at all. All right. What are you saying here? Well, you probably know how scarce resources are. Yes, they are. Resources are scarce, and that is another reason we have, online stuff. Um, uh, Lee spoke of group coaching. Yes. Yeah. I also do the same, I work with people with all kinds of it's not just partners. So, anyway, I can't read right now for some reason. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep going. So, one step at a time, I said that. Okay. Self care. I know, I get sick of hearing it, but self care really is important, and what you can do for yourself. That is an entire video. Okay. But let's just say self care to me means taking the opportunity anytime you can to give a little more care to yourself in any situation, whether that be speak nicer to yourself, go ahead and relax in the shower. Don't sit and stress about the other person. Take the time to just be present to the hot water, the shampoo, the soap. You know what I mean? Like, be there, take the shower, get out. Eat your meal. Try to keep mealtime away from these thoughts. Try to even if you have to put music on or television on or something to take the thoughts away from the toxic person while you're digesting. It's important. You're putting food in your body. Be grateful and thankful for yourself. Okay. Gratitude um is is helpful. Okay. It is helpful. It is hard to find gratitude when you're feeling like this. And I understand that. It's helpful for a lot of people, okay? And if it isn't for you, that's okay, move on, do something else, right? You need to feel what you need to feel. You need to feel your way through it. It's we've numbed up a lot of times. We've shut down and have so much dissociation that happens from tolerating and trying to maintain and trying to improve a relationship that is with a toxic person. So when we leave or when they leave us, it's a time of grief. It's a time of a lot of feels coming back slowly or sometimes rapidly all at once. Understand who you are. Like, that is one reason I really like understanding your Myers-Briggs type or any other personality type quiz that you think is good for you to understand about yourself. Because if you know, oh, like I know I'm a person that will analyze her emotions as she's having them. It's really hard for me to just sit and feel. Okay, I'm gonna analyze what's happening. I'm gonna feel it. I'm gonna think, oh, I feel this because of that, and that because of this. I'm gonna trace it back and like detectively sleuth my way back through my emotions, and I don't just sit there and feel it. And when I do, it's usually too big for me because I'm not, my way is more the other way. So knowing that about myself, I go, okay, I need to slow down and I just need to feel it. And someone that feels a lot might need to do the opposite. They might, like, INFPs often need to understand what's happening with their emotions so they can get out of the big feels for a minute, or ENFPs, right? Get out of those big feels for just a minute so they can process it. Otherwise they ride the emotions too hard and long, and then it's really difficult for them. So yeah, it's, what are we saying here? Um let's see. Some speak of narcissistic coworkers and friends. Yeah, I should do one on coworkers or bosses soon because that's a interesting one. Um, what are we saying here? Hi, Karina. Oh, I can't keep track of chat. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. Okay, learning what is attractive to you in that relationship. I know that's going to sound funny because you probably might be thinking nothing's attractive to me when they're terrible to me. But there's something there's a hook. There's something that hooks you in, and often it's things like fear of leaving, fear of being alone, fear of feeling like no one will ever love you, feeling like those kind of things will keep you in the trauma bond cycle. We have to heal those things. This kind of thing, going through something where you've been trauma bonded, where you've been with someone toxic, brings up parts of yourself that it's beneficial for you to often heal, that maybe have nothing to do with that other person. Does that make sense? Like, maybe your whole life you've always felt like no one ever got you, and that toxic person sure seemed to get you. They got you so well, they knew how to push every button and manipulate you, didn't they? So that's not love, that's not getting you, that's using you. And we have to separate it, and then we have to understand we're not alone. We aren't so foreign on this planet that no one's ever going to get us, right? It may feel like that, but healing those parts that personally for you hook you back to that relationship. Um, a list of standards for how you should and will be treated. That is often helpful. Having a list, and then contrast that with how you were treated. When you're trying to reach back, look at that list of standards. Oh, uh, that doesn't even equate to how they treat me. See, um, living your own life, super important. Living your own life. We isolate a lot when after we've had a toxic person in our life. We isolate and we don't get out into life and live a life, or we stay in the same patterns. Maybe we're very extroverted social people, and we stay in the same patterns of socializing, of work, of whatever else we do in our life. Change the patterns. Change your external life a little bit, but make it something you enjoy, something you can get into for yourself. Start rediscovering yourself. Somebody said something really great. It was, don't think you can go back to who you were. Okay. We all are like, oh, I wish I could just be who I was before I met them. Or a lot of people, not all of us. Don't try to do that. Try to rediscover, reinvent who you will be. That doesn't mean who you were isn't a part of it. She or he will come out and play right with this new person you're becoming. You've got wisdom, you've got experience, you've got wounds and scars, and you've got understandings that you never had before about yourself and other people. All of that is going to mix in with who you once were and and the trauma that you now have. So blend it together and embrace it and love and discover this new person that you are becoming. All of that takes your mind away from that other person. Does that make sense? If we continue to focus on understanding ad nauseum about narcissism, then we are throwing our brains right back into the cycle. We need to understand it. We need to understand it. A lot of people need to understand it to a very high level, and that's okay. But once you're to the point where you've done that, it's time to overcome it. And by overcome, this is what we're talking about. Okay. And the last thing I want to say is cultivate healthy connections. It can be with nature. It can be with music. It can be with another human being or more. It can be with a group of people. It can be with animals, with your own children, but most of all with yourself. Cultivate healthy connections slowly, 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 slowly until you feel like you can trust and you feel safe. If you can't trust people right now, nature, exercise, animals, yourself, music, those are all safe places to dance. It's safe places to start cultivating healthy connections. Connections with life, right? Connect yourself back to the world around you where you're learning to manage your own life. One thing when you're trauma bonded is you've spent an entire relationship, however long, whether it was 1 week or 20, 30 years, you've spent all that time training yourself to manage the other person down because otherwise they are going to hurt you. You've spent all your focus and all your energy on that other person. So refocus back on yourself, your own life, and cultivate these healthy connections. That is all I got today. I'm going to look what you guys said, and then I'm going to head out before the next batch of kids arrives. Yes, I call it you 2.0. There you go. Robin, hey, Robin. I can advocate about the value of group coaching. Thank you very much. Because yes, it is a good place of support, and there are good people there. Let's see here. Okay, I think that is it. I don't see any more questions. So let's see. And I'm starting to sing, which means we are on our way out. Okay, I guess that's it. That's all I got for Trauma Bond today. We're going to keep it nice and short. And it's about what's next, not what was. Lise, 7/9/21. This woman actually writes things down. Robin is amazing. And then reads it back to me. And I'm like, who said that? You said that. Okay, well, that's good. That's a good one. Saved this, and these 7 words have carried me on rough days when trauma bonds pop up. I'm going to read it again. It is not about what's next. Wait, sorry. I read it wrong. Time to go. All right. Robin is reminding me of words that are, it is about what's next, not what was. It is. It's about what's next. I mean, isn't that the nature of letting go, right? And the nature of moving on, but it's not easy. And you guys, if you are in a trauma bonded state right now, if you're in a relationship with someone you're having a difficult time leaving or an impossible feeling time leaving, get yourself some help if you need it. Check out the links in the description for personal help, as well as links to Queen Being for more, articles, videos, quizzes, workshops. We have all kinds of stuff over there to help you get through this. We have Facebook group support. We have off of Facebook support that is peer support. I'm over there too. Angie's over there. We're all over there. And anyway, You're not alone. Okay. You guys take care. I will see you guys later this week. Bye bye.